welcome back. This is Module 2, How Humans Human, Episode 1, Campbell, Watts, and the Rite of Myth. And we're going to start with just an excerpt of kind of what this module will be about and this episode. Humans have always needed mythology in order to understand life, what lies beyond it, and ourselves. Before science, before the internet, we had myth, ritual, and community. This module asks, what happens when those structures erode? What fills the gap? And what does it tell us about human nature that we will believe almost anything if we need it badly enough? In this episode, we'll discuss a little bit about the previous modules, videos, and fill in any blanks on the mythology of media. We'll set the stage for a discussion of how and why humans do things, and how technology is just one of many tools, among others such as religion and story and culture, tradition, rebellion, individuality, gender roles, and the age-old question of why are we here. So to start out, I want to have, first of all, welcome Dan back to the channel. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Our humanities expert. I'd like you to start out with kind of explaining who Joseph Campbell and Alan Watts were, what they taught, and kind of start with that.
Great. Yeah, they were rough contemporaries, and so they lived about the same time. They did interact with each other a couple times, but certainly intellectually they engaged.
Right.
If not first degree of separation, it definitely second degree of separation.
Of course.
So Joseph Campbell was from I believe New York State.
New York State, sure.
And went pretty traditional academic route. Got a master's degree in American Indian Studies.
Nice.
And when he graduated with the master's, the Great Depression was just beginning. So he put out a bunch of. He wanted to get a teaching job because what do you do with a master's in American?
You teach it to other people who want the same masters.
Right.
Of course.
So, but of course there were no jobs. It was the Great Depression, so he ends up moving to a small cabin, totally off the grid in upstate New York, in Woodstock, New York, and he reads for 5 years.
That sounds like a dream life to many.
If you're into that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so he reads everything. He reads absolutely everything. Near the end of that, he's sending out more applications to be a teacher, and Sarah Lawrence University, which is at that time a women's college in New York, hires him to teach.
Nice.
So that begins then this long. He stayed at Sarah Lawrence's whole teaching career.
Oh. Okay.
And interesting, teaching young women.
Right.
And he ends up publishing his first kind of substantive book, Hero with 1,000 Faces,
Great book.
in the late 40s. And that really became his key book. Even though he published many other books after that, that book really was the key insight that he brought to the study of mythology.
Right, absolutely.
And quickly, Alan Watts was born, I believe, in Surrey in the UK, and his father did a lot of traveling and stuff, and got exposed to Oriental art at a young age, but ended up going also a very traditional path initially, as he became an Anglican priest, and actually did some teaching and some pastoring.
Interesting.
Yep, and but continued to evolve his passion and interest in the Orient.
Right.
And so he ends up moving to the United States, very clean cut, and first as an Anglican priest, and then he moves to the Bay Area, San Francisco, and gets a public television program where he's basically teaching a public television audience about Zen Buddhism.
Right.
in the mid 60s.
Oh my gosh.
But he's very clean cut looking, and he's doing stuff, and but he became, just as Campbell was kind of this kind of historical trans-historical interpreter of mythology, Watts became this kind of translator of Oriental ideas. And so it's interesting because Campbell was kind of outside in, looking through history and across different cultures, and Watts was more kind of inside out, looking at states of consciousness and then kind of extending out.
Absolutely. They both they were both living, or, they both had thinking about the same kind of things, same kind of subjects, yet they had quite different lives. I believe Joseph Campbell was married to a ballet dancer who was also a professor.
Who was a student of his.
Interesting.
Jean Erdman was a phenomenal ballerina and a very creative spirit, and they were married forever.
Sure.
And had a home in Hawaii where Jean was from.
Okay.
But very, very close relationship.
Yeah. And they didn't have any children.
No.
Whereas Watts had, I don't know if he had multiple wives or if he just had multiple women, but he had multiple children.
He was married, I think, 3 times.
Okay.
Yeah.
So nothing too crazy.
No.
But he, interestingly enough, never wanted to define himself as a guru. He wanted to be known as a spiritual entertainer, which it sounds a little bit like self-deprecating humor, but it's also probably a little bit of a cop-out. He didn't want to be the one that had all of the answers for spirituality and these questions that people wanted answered, that we all want answered right out the gate. But I think what we see from them is that they've built their own paths for their lives and their studies and their teachings, and in the midst of all of it, I think people might have looked to them for answers, whereas all they were doing was observing the architecture of mythology and of life and trying to figure it out for themselves, as opposed to giving out any of the answers. They never actually built any new architecture. They just kind of explained what was already there.
Yeah, I would say that in some ways they were translators.
Right.
They were able to kind of survey just in crazy amounts of information and translate that to a contemporary audience.
Totally.
Both in a highly effective way. But I would say even both of their mantras, follow your bliss with Campbell and I'm a spiritual entertainer. I mean, for Watts, that's actually a Buddhist concept that says if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. And that just means that you can't imitate your way into enlightenment.
Right.
So he's saying you can't imitate me
into
enlightenment, into whatever your thing is.
Right.
And Campbell was really follow your bliss, which was really a nod to the Arthurian follow the Grail, basically the quest for the Holy Grail.
Of course.
And
yes.
So they're both kind of, again, translating these concepts to a modern audience, but not bringing necessarily a new architecture.
Right. And it's interesting, too, because Campbell studied a lot of the Arthurian legends. And even in that time, most people were not knights or kings. They were actually, peasants living on, the land of somebody else, a lord or whatever.
Yes.
And Watts studied the Buddha, who actually was a prince.
That's right.
Before he became the enlightened vision of, Oriental religion, religious aspirations, the Tao. And also, Campbell, you were talking about how Campbell was saying to use the photograph of Earthrise that NASA took after the moon landing as the new mandala, which is the circle that you see as the life force, right? Is that a good description of what that is?
Yeah, I mean, the mandala is across different cultures. The Tibet is a prominent one where they do these really elaborate sand drawings of mandalas, but it's supposed to represent kind of this holistic energy source.
Gotcha.
And,
So, yeah. Okay.
And so Campbell, was asked many times, what is the new mythology? And he's like, follow your bliss, and, we're on one planet.
Right.
So maybe we ought to orientate around that.
I mean, it's not like those are bad ideas or bad advice. It's just, it doesn't have any stability to it. Maybe it did for him. Maybe he knew what bliss meant for himself. And maybe he's trying to say, find your own.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what does that actually mean structurally? Because life is built on structure.
Yes, and not everybody has the same amount of drive to read,
Yes.
For 5 years in a cabin.
Right.
To try to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Most people want a reasonable amount of questioning, but they want to live a life. They
Right.
want to live a normal life. They want to have productive work and a family or whatever they want.
Yep. Yep. And not all of us can be an astronaut looking
No.
at the Earth from space, from the moon.
Right.
Let's see. I mean, the Hindu structure of the
Ashram.
Ashram, the four stages of life, the path of life, the student, the householder, the forest dweller, and the renunciate, so walking out into the forest and returning to nature. I mean, these things are translated to modern experiences of the world and modern structures, going to school and then going to post-secondary education and then, getting married, buying a house, having children, going to the nursing home, and sailing off to wherever you believe in comes next. And I think that those structures are inherent and we know what it looks like, birth, life, death. However, follow your bliss doesn't necessarily give us any insight, and neither do, Watts has a lot of great talks, and he is just a wonderful talker.
Yes.
I know you love to listen to him.
I do.
When you're busy doing stuff and you have the time. But, neither one of them present anything in terms of life architecture that we either don't already know or could help us to discover meaning and purpose within these things that are expected of us. And also right now with the freedom that we have to decide what we want. Some people don't want children. Some people want to, pursue a career over that. Or some people want to choose Christianity to be their rock to understanding things and understanding the world. And none of these things are bad. And people can pick and choose, and I think that's the beauty. But the problem is the lack of architecture beyond, these tribal, fragmented pieces of culture. There is no one unifying vision for what life looks like.
Yeah. One thing I'll say, is that there's a coherence. So if you go back to the Indian culture, the forest dweller period, the kids are raised and now they're a householder, they leave and they allow their kids to be in that householder phase. Now we have a situation where, for example, baby boomers hold a massive amount of wealth and homes.
Yeah, they literally...
because they need to go to the forest
right.
and let the next generation live this phase of life.
Yes, and then when we do, they get all mad because you're doing it wrong. It's going to be different because the world is different.
Right, but you see the coherence between the psychological stages of life,
right,
including the forest dweller who's now moving from the field of accomplishment towards kind of contemplating life and mellowing out, chilling out. But it also clears the way
right.
for those in the earlier stages to fully be present and to have the resources that they need during that stage.
In order to figure it out.
Imagine if we had that now.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think going back to what we were talking about, you were drawn to the humanities when you were in your 20s, and now I'm finding myself drawn to those same subjects, assuredly through influence from, someone that I talk to all the time, who I've been around for a long time, and seeing your books and those things. Do you feel like you can? I feel like I can relate to Watts and Campbell more because they were looking for answers to the questions that they had on the individual level. And I think that there's a lot of power in that. I think what we're trying to figure out, though, is once you identify the tools and the architecture that is inherent, how do you rebuild that on the, on life's stage?
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing that's important to point out is that, and both Watts and Campbell acknowledge this, that just like we have different forms of intelligence and different learning styles, the life of kind of intellectual inquiry is one way, but it's not the only way. There's the life of outward kindness and generosity. There's all kinds of ways. There are many paths.
Yeah.
And so you need to have structures that allow for that kind of diversity of what speaks to that person, but with enough structure, coherent structure, that it's not at this odds.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. And, too often I hear people say, I'm not religious, but I am spiritual. And I think, both Campbell and Watts were very influenced by Nietzsche. And in Thus Speaks Zarathustra, there's a character, is it Pan, the god of nature?
Pan, exactly.
He says God is dead.
Right.
And I think, that foreshadowed the deconstruction of mythology. And then he also had the idea of the Übermensch, the Superman. And that feels very foreign to a lot of people, I think, because, we can't all be supermen. What Syndrome says in The Incredibles, once everyone's super, nobody will be.
Right. Well, and that concept of the Übermensch or the Superman is such an interesting one, and we see that obviously in Superman, the cartoon. We see it in 2001: A Space Odyssey, where the music of the Superman
Strauss
is thus brought Zarathustra. It's Strauss's music to that part where the Superman, the Übermensch, descends the mountaintop where he's been, and that is what it's ushering in. But to the point, we all have to be super?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, it's very easy to be super when you're at the top of a mountain.
What's the Panashrans?
Yes.
It's easy to be a holy man on the top of a mountain.
Exactly. And it's so true. And I don't know, it's just interesting to hear that people, and I do relate to that in a lot of ways. I mean, growing up, we did some Christian things, as you do. It's just, if we think about these things, it's good because it brings us together in a community, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I met a lot of my closest friends at church camp over the summers when I was growing up, and we did, Catholic school for a little bit too when I was very little, and there's so much power in having this shared belief system. But now, as I've gotten older, I do relate to that idea of the I'm not religious but I am spiritual take. But this is such an unstructured way of thinking about things, and it means there's no God with a capital G, but there's the idea of God, right?
Yeah.
And there's no actual origin myth to draw from. The world just kind of exists, and we believe in the Big Bang or whatever everything is just kind of already here and it doesn't really matter in the context of our lives. And then, there's no really moral compass to draw from besides what we believe is good and bad. And that line seems to be, hazier and hazier these days in many, many people's tribes. And there's no, actual ritual, maybe graduation or, I can't even really name anything that I see as universal. There's just this vague sense of something bigger, and I can't see what it is. I know it's there, and it's this sense of, we know that we need mythology. We know that we need an idea of why things are the way they are. We know how to live, sort of, but there's just no structure to it, any of it.
No, and I'm struck by the lack of emotional impact that science, these incredibly big ideas like the Big Bang, which the universe, which is, we cannot conceive of the expanse of the universe, was in theory kind of this thing, and then it's small.
I can't wrap my head around it. I can't.
With the distance between electrons in our, so concepts of science are so profound, but yet they don't carry the psychological structural impact.
It doesn't feel grounded. It feels
as a cosmology.
It feels so separate.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's over there.
Yeah, and the idea of, God being dead. It's like, okay, God is dead, now what? Right? And we use
We're left with being the Superman.
Exactly. And I don't want to be the Superman. I just want to know how to follow your bliss.
Yeah.
Truly.
I just want to have enough structure to have a whole life.
Exactly. And it's not too much to ask. It's just, so anyways.
There's that.
I know. But yeah, what did I have written down here? I wrote down when we had a conversation before hitting record.
Mm-hmm.
Mythology's function is to attempt to live a life through ritual, understanding of the world, guidelines to life's morals and community rules, and naming things without worrying about being right, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
Belief is stronger than simply acknowledging that the world is a mysterious place and our conscious experience in it is fragile. And I think going to the way that Campbell and Watts thought about myth, I spoke in the last video that I made for this course that myth serves four universal functions: sense of awe, bring order to the chaos, support social orders and morals, and give us a framework from which we can begin to understand ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I think that those were his answers that he came to after reading for 5 years in the woods. And I would probably argue that Watts drew a similar conclusion to that, in the way that, consciousness is simply the house we live in. Our mind is where we live, and these mythologies are characters and dreams, and I don't know. What do you?
Yeah, he talked, like, one of the things he brought up a few times was, imagine yourself being able to live a full lifetime in your dream.
Yeah.
And you could do anything you wanted in your dreams, and you could live 1,000 lifetimes. And then he said, at some point, you'd want to not be aware that you're manipulating the dream.
Right.
Because that takes the fun out of it to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And he said, and then you'd construct it so you wouldn't be aware of it, and then you'd find yourself sitting here talking, listening to me.
So it's like we want to just live and have things kind of already be written, already be constructed.
When it's the mystery, it's the surprise.
Yeah.
That really gives life its savor.
It's why we tell stories. It's like we're trying to figure out a way to have that be our own life. Our own life is this dream where you wake up and don't really know how you got there, and everything kind of already is it's already written for you. You're on the stage, and you don't have to look at a script, but you are following it at the same time.
Yeah. The world used to be alive with mythological characters, and I think one of the things that Nietzsche was ushering in, that is in Campbell's Four Things, is that if we live in a world of kind of Newtonian science or even quantum science, the four functions that Campbell talked about for mythology have to all be present, was one of the things he emphasized. You can't just have a couple of them.
Right.
So what do we do with awe when we're confronting these massive facts of like the Big Bang or an infinite universe?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really strike awe anymore.
Like
it just feels like something you read in science class.
Okay. Yeah. No,
so,
truly.
So how do you start to kind of bring that coherence?
Yeah. I mean, and that's a whole other thing. I think that narrative provides coherence.
It does.
And
good narrative does.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I mean, but also bad narrative. Right now we have this American dream of, success equaling money and fame and power.
Right.
Because that's what gets you to a point where you can start following your bliss, because bliss don't pay the bills.
You can get the $600 million super yacht.
Great. Okay, awesome. But it's true though. I mean, when I think about ultra wealthy individuals that aren't pursuing power with this insatiable hunger, like, Elon Musk, for example, I think of people that perform their wealth as hobbies, playing, like truly, like buying themselves the time to sit and enjoy and think, and maybe that really is the answer, is this pursuit of knowledge or this pursuit of experience. Maybe that is what bliss really actually was to Campbell. I mean, he spent a long time reading by himself in isolation, and maybe what he's saying is you have to take the time to find that before you even follow anything, and maybe that's part of the journey itself. I don't know.
He talked about AUM,
yeah,
which is that meditative and really it was going from the back of the throat to the beginning, and it represents kind of the continuum of action in the world. But he said the fourth element was the silence, and that is the bliss, is the silence.
Should we try it?
Yeah. But what we see is our most privileged, from a power and wealth and so on point of view, seem to know nothing but kinetic action. Like they want to build spaceships and go to Mars.
They're like pinball machines.
Bouncing around, and it's never enough.
Yeah, but why? And I think we all wonder why from down here. Seriously. I think we were talking about the myth of Prometheus. No, not Prometheus. He was the one that gave...
Tantalus,
yes. Yeah. The guy that reaches for the apple but can never reach it. And when people finally do get the apple, they look like goofballs. and I feel like they're...
What do I do with this?
They don't know what to do with it because there's no actual... And I think maybe that is the part of the answer, is maybe there is really no reason why God is dead, or maybe there's no reason why there is no architecture. Maybe the architecture was the friends we made along the way.
The journey.
The friends we made along the way.
Yeah, right.
Seriously.
Right.
But I want to go
like
back.
That.
I mean, it's kind of a joke, but it also kind of isn't.
No.
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 I mean, and we talked about too I wrote down, religion takes the burden of trying to figure out what life means and how to live it by saying, model your life off this story and this prophet. Your prophet was morally perfect and told you what your role would be. With the rise of individualism and the aimlessness of post-war Western world, the prophets turned into prophets. You made that one. I love that. But also, though, there is this freedom in that you can self-define your own identity and your own structure and your own life path and your own personal mythology.
Mm-hmm. But I think that has led to people not knowing what to do, and ultimately, meaning comes in relationship.
Yeah, it's true. and also shared understanding, relatability with one another, and understanding where your role is in a larger framework. And now, I think we were talking about this as well. This is really interesting. Human beings were forever in their history limited by daylight.
Yes.
And daylight meant talking about practical things, oh, where are we going to go gather today?
Mm-hmm.
Those kinds of discussions on, hunting and finding food and shelter and figuring out problems that ail the daily life, regular Monday morning water cooler talk, right?
Where is the water?
Exactly. And now it's like, okay, how are we going to get $5 more out of all of our customers or whatever,
Right.
Whatever it is, or how are we going to build this house today, or, and then at night, the flicker of the campfire, this dim lighting, that's when people started to tell stories.
That's right.
And get excited about the idea of a life beyond the monotony, a life of adventure and, good deed and change and evolution.
I think that's when they started to do social architecture.
Yeah.
Like they started to create the stories, the origin stories about, the antelope. Like you go back to Native American stories and you can imagine them. They respected, they knew that they were in community with the buffalo, for example.
Exactly.
And that their life literally depended upon the buffalo's life. Like
acknowledging the soul and using every single piece of it and being grateful for it. And, a lot of their origin myths for nature were so great. I particularly love the one about the earth being a great turtle.
Yeah.
And that it's standing on another turtle, and that's standing on another. And I mean, it's nature. It's playful. It's so real to the idea of life and the world being chaotic and unpredictable, yet still has this sense of a pattern. And I think science carries a lot of that in it as well. Scientists can't explain the pendulum swing, the physics of a pendulum swing. It doesn't really it has this flow, but it's kind of illogical, the way that, it goes from this to like, and it's beautiful, and you can feel it's like music, but nature does genuinely play its own pauses naturally.
Yep.
But now, I mean, the extension of light, so we are able to literally just turn on a light bulb and have this daylight flood our psyche. And I think Marshall McLuhan was talking about this as well, or maybe I think I mentioned it in that video on AI and the medium is the message. But the electric light bulb literally changed everything about time and work and social roles and performance and individuality. It literally flipped a switch.
Literally. And to think about it, like literally only 100 years ago, electrification was still happening
Yeah.
100 years ago.
Yeah.
And so it's just an incredibly short time
Yeah. It's
that
insane.
we've had this. And now, the light isn't for the light of conversation, it's the light to watch the television or the whatever.
It's literally like the flickering light stories
Yes.
of media
Mm-hmm.
are now someone else's agenda. And I still can't get over the fact that mythology.com is a marketing agency.
Right.
It's just like that literally describes exactly where we're at right now
Mm-hmm.
with, who is actually deciding what happens now that God is dead. It's humans trying to sell each other meaning in these dark alleyways,
Mm-hmm.
or rather these fluorescently lit alleyways.
Right. Blinking lights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and this is probably why Campbell was so influential
Mm-hmm.
in the film industry, not because of the mythology that we have right now, but just the idea that he took all of the myths and translated them
Mm-hmm.
into the software of the hero's journey, and now it's very easy to understand translating that into other places like marketing, like
Yep.
media, whatever.
Yeah, he was able to understand kind of the dramatic tension and
Mm-hmm.
kind of overcoming of obstacles, and then this kind of you mentioned Prometheus, the bringing back of the boon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
There he goes.
And that
sure.
That's satisfying at a psychological level,
Right.
but it's just a one-off story.
But we still feel the satisfaction,
We
though.
do.
We really do. And I mean, I love like Lord of the Rings.
Mhm.
And growing up, I loved Harry Potter, even though now it's kind of been overdone a little bit. But these stories, they do mean something to us, and I think we've associated it with the fact that we have all of the archetypes in our own minds.
Mm-hmm.
In Jung's, sense of dream mythology, and
Mm-hmm.
Campbell's and Watts's as well. And also I noted this, and I want to know if you agree, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that Campbell, in his book The Hero with a Thousand Faces,
Mm-hmm.
he kind of handpicked myths from many different cultures and times of human history, but he kind of handpicked stories of glory and power, as opposed to, like, where's the female story, right?
Yeah.
Or and not even that, just the not the hero. Like, where is the allies story? Where is
Yeah.
the old man, the sage? Every archetype, don't they have a monomyth as well?
Yeah, that's such a strong point. And, again, that goes to relational. It's not about the Superman all the time.
Exactly.
Like, does everybody have to be, from Krypton, and be,
Yeah.
Right, a full life, you can be many roles. There are many roles that you can
Yeah.
play to have a full life, and we don't all, what do they call that, not main character?
Main character syndrome?
Yeah.
I know. I mean, people are so into that, and I mean, and I think a lot of celebrities who we are so influenced by still for some reason, they have main character syndrome.
Yeah.
And we see people, and then Campbell's mythology, his monomyth, brings that to the big screen for pretty much any frickin' movie that we ever see. It is always going to be, if it's not the hero, like in Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, it's the girl boss.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's the, I don't know. I mean, and it depends on the genre as well.
Yes.
Not every genre, or not every movie is an adventure story
Mm-hmm.
or a tale of glory and power. But those echoes are still there. They're
Yeah.
it's still very influential. You were talking about how Campbell went to a Grateful Dead show and he saw the mythological characters in modern culture,
He said it was a Dionysian festival. It was a Dionysian festival.
Which he's 100% spot on, mind you. You know, and you know, both men were highly influenced by Jung and his archetypes.
Mm-hmm. And Jung was in turn highly influenced by Nietzsche.
Right.
He taught a course on Thus Sprak Zarathustra. Jung did.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just, we see the archetypes in our daily lives, but I don't think that we recognize that, and maybe that's not true, but, you know, it's harder to recognize all of them within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We only really are able to see ourselves as the main character. I mean, being the main character just means having a point of view. And the main character doesn't mean you are the hero necessarily. It just means that's literally like the only way that you can experience your consciousness. We give people such a bad time for literally just living out their life as the main character. I mean, who else are you going to be in your own life, right? But I think recognizing those archetypes inherent within yourself, we are able to be a shapeshifter. We are able to be someone's enemy, someone's ally.
Well, that's just it. We're all the characters, depending on the context that we're in.
But we can only be those other characters to other people.
Right. In relationship.
And I think that's
right.
And that just opened up something in my mind. Maybe that is part of why we need architecture. So, you know, we don't live as individuals by ourselves. Like, you know, that's
right.
The micro level.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, at the mezzo level, the middle level is, you know, other people, communities, our tribes. What does that look like? You know, that's where going to church camp fits in. Or
with no phone.
Right.
So you were forced
to
be in relationship.
And it was one of the best parts of the whole entire experience.
Yeah.
But, you know, we've kind of devolved every individual into like every individual kind of creating their own mythological journey in the way that Campbell and Watts did for their own lives. And, you know, the deconstruction of mythology and, you know, community and these structures that allow us to figure out where our bliss even starts. It's accelerating that deconstruction. The path to whatever your bliss is so broken down, whether it's a job or a family or whatever. And technology really isolates us. So
it does. I think that one of the perhaps paradoxes of technology is it extends our reach to people and to places and stuff, but we have to remember that, you know, Noah in Sapiens talks about this too, but he's not the only one, that, you know, our human operating system really was developed for about 200 to 350 people in a community.
Yeah, that's true. That's well documented information.
And so that's our operating system. Archetypes within that kind of a community, you know, you would know them, you would know everybody, and then, you know, people would marry and they'd be hopefully a couple degrees removed from some of that. But but you know,
they would go to other tribes.
That's our human operating system. And now, you know,
but that doesn't really work anymore.
Well, but that's the point, right?
Yeah.
Light is artificial.
Yeah.
Our relationship has become artificial.
Yeah.
We're not connected
in
a community way, where Watts uses this phrase. It's actually, the phrase is not unique to him, but this is where I learned about what it meant. Ever heard the phrase beyond the pale? That's beyond the pale. Mm-mm. It's a phrase, it's an old phrase that means that's out of order. You've gone too far.
Okay.
And beyond the pale was basically the marking of the town or the community. So if you were exiled beyond the pale, you were no longer supported by the community, and that usually meant you died. So to have that strong community relationship was literally existential.
Yeah, so it's almost like it's required to have some relatability within the people in your community,
Or you die.
otherwise you literally die.
Yeah,
But now it feels like your people, your community, becomes the comment section of the video you're watching, or the coffee shop where you're sitting, or the airplane that you're on. I don't know those people.
Right. Right.
That screaming baby, we don't have any remorse for the mother or the child on the plane because they're not part of your thing.
I don't know them.
But that's the thing, though, that's what the world feels like. Where, we don't really know 200 to 300 people anymore. Maybe you do. I mean, maybe you live in a small town, but that's generally the exception and not the rule.
Right. And yet we're wired for like these types of reactions. So we're driving a big SUV and we have a fight or flight because someone cuts us off. Now
I know I do.
Now that might be appropriate if someone invaded your hunting territory.
Right.
But it's not.
But your car is your hunting territory, dude. It's true. I mean, think about it. Like, you are in your car going to whatever it is you're going to from wherever you were before. That you are hunting for where you're. It just isn't as dramatic. And honestly, probably back then, it wasn't as dramatic as we make it out to be looking back at it now.
I don't know. I haven't lived then, but I know that the stakes are different.
Yeah.
Right? But our operating system is not.
Yeah.
We're still having these kinds of reactions.
Well, I'm going to give you the floor to talk about your book, which is available, and I'll link it below because what you're doing is a function that applies to so many things beyond myth, science, and other subjects. It's called The Architecture of Intelligence, and it's about, well, I'll let you go into it because, yeah.
Thank you. So really, it really did start with Campbell and Watts early on trying to answer this question that we've been talking about. How do I construct a life? And, I was really stimulated by what they were saying, but I didn't know what to do. Mm-hmm. So naturally I went to law school.
So that you could figure out some boundaries.
Because I thought that was a safe choice for
the life that you
a
expected.
reasonably secure life to have a family and so on. So I've been struggling with this question of how do you architect not only a life but systems. And then for whatever reason, my work life has kind of put me at these inflection points for primarily business shifts. So brought on by the internet or by financial innovation.
So weird.
It's really odd that I've been at these inflection points. So I've been struggling with architecture, kind of the architecture of meaning and purpose and so on. And then I also really like reading about biological systems and ecological systems, and I started to kind of connect the dots. Like, what are the systems that have worked across 4 billion years of R&D, evolution, and what did they have in common? Because there is no subject, there's no self necessarily or ego as far as we know in a cellular system,
right,
or in a forest system, but yet it's clearly intelligent.
The trees, the ego, exactly, but the consciousness, I would say, is there. And that's kind of what you're trying to say.
I don't know. I think so. I don't know, because I'm filtering it through a really limited sense of my own kind of perception and understanding. But I certainly see intelligence everywhere.
Absolutely.
And I don't know what degree, that intelligence is conscious, because we tend to define consciousness as self-awareness.
Right.
I don't know what that means. So anyway, I'm bringing that. But what I did observe is that the successful systems, evolution really defines success as kind of propagating into the next generation. Can whatever pattern this is, a snake or a bird or a tree or a flower, can that propagate itself into subsequent generations?
Right.
And that's success from an evolutionary point of view. And that isn't necessarily a subjective sense. Like
Right.
the tree really wants to shed seeds, and like
I really gotta do it.
Who
Yeah.
knows?
For sure.
But as a system, that's what we've observed. And so I came up really with this observation of what I call the information liquidity index, which looks at signal to noise, trustworthiness, context, structure, and interoperability. And are those the 5? I mean, I don't know. It works well enough.
It works so well across so many different things. And I think what you were saying, you've been in these inflection points,
Yes.
albeit in business, but you've been in these inflection points enough where you understand that those are at least good starting points.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm a firm believer in the philosophy of George Box, who was a statistician that said that all models are wrong, some models are useful.
I love that so much
And
too.
I think this is a very useful model, and
It's so good.
I've applied it across thousands of different systems.
Cancer.
Cancer.
The American Bar Association. I mean, I've been helping edit the book, so
Yes.
but I think what you're doing is you're doing the work that Campbell and Watts never did by at least attempting to build some sort of architecture, but it's almost like a blueprint navigation system.
Yes. Yeah, it really does, and it looks at those different scales, at the micro, meso, and macro, and looks at at a forest ecosystem, and what does that look like? Because it's interdependence. They're interdependencies, and so how do we learn from natural systems across these scales?
Yeah.
And then design systems of our own, our life, our communities, our work, in a way that is aligned to a purpose,
Right.
to what we value.
Right.
And so that's what this is about. It's about how do we be intentional about aligning what I call the teleology, the purpose of what we're trying to do with that system, and the teleonomy, which is the structure of that system.
Totally. I mean, we rely upon these systems of coordination more than even like bees building their
Right.
hives.
Right.
There's so many layers of cooperation across so many levels. Humans, I think storytelling, like going back to Marshall McLuhan, where he talks about the mediums of electricity and, television being extensions of the human body.
Yeah.
Storytelling is the extension of the human need and desire for structure and for relationships
Yes.
between one another. It's an evolutionary thing, just like having an opposable thumb and 2 ears, 2 eyes, but only one nose. But it's difficult to come up with the right mythology or universal myth. That's why there's so many different languages, religions, and so many different types of culture. And yet they mirror each other, they mimic each other, there are so many similarities.
There are. And that's I think that's because we have the same operating system.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
the French and the Italian both have a word for when you're finished eating and you still have sauce on your plate. There's a word for eating it with bread.
It's called delicious.
Yeah. But those kinds of things,
Yes.
those
Because
common
those are
threads.
universal experiences.
And I think what you're trying to do with your book
Mm-hmm.
is trying to find a way to approach those universal experiences from one vantage point.
How do we design for them?
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of the French and Italian, like, they have a word for that, just like Eskimos have multiple words for snow,
Yeah.
because that meal is important to them.
Yeah.
And the experience of that and the flavor and all that. So how do we design a life that has a higher likelihood that we have those types of experiences that we value?
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
We've become these homo exomorphic
Right.
beings. Can you kind of go into that, what that means?
Yeah, it exomorphic. So I was thinking about, the different kind of evolution of different Homo erectus type creatures, and then what is the implication of now we live within an environment that there are so many complex external systems that we rely upon, and now technology is just taking that to a whole nother degree, and we are no longer kind of Homo sapien, which means knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Sapien means knowledge. We are Homo exomorphic. Exomorphic is when the insidious rock, I think it is, intrudes upon another geological layer.
Right.
And so we're like that. We've like strapped on this external thing, and it's influencing who we are as a creature to the
Yes.
point where who wins in this kind of Homo exomorphic world are people that are greater aligned to algorithmic thinking.
Right. Well, an algorithm has like it's literally like digging within itself. It's an extension of not anything human related. It's literally an extension of our business models of massaging and the messaging of media, and it's like digging itself. I don't know. And that's kind of what AI is doing as well. It's pulling from other things. It's not even going anywhere near outside interacting with the world. It's interacting within another system.
Yeah, I think that's a really strong point. It's literally cannibalizing
Yeah,
itself,
totally.
because it's living off of past, large language models, which are really just a record of the past.
Yeah.
And then it's giving the past back to us.
Yeah, exactly. And we are the raw material.
We are literally the raw material.
And the ritual because this really does starts to feel like our mythology in a way.
Mm-hmm.
The ritual is now engaging with these tools, like, scrolling, the algorithm, oh, it's my birthday. time to post on Instagrams,
I hope someone likes it.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. And you were saying that Watts talked about that with the camera.
He did. I mean, way back in the 60s, he was talking about people go on vacation, they're at the Grand Canyon, and they're experiencing this enormous Grand Canyon through the little lens of a camera.
I know.
And so they've reduced that experience to chronicling it.
Yeah.
And that's just on steroids today.
Oh my God! The fact that he uses the Grand Canyon too really
Yes.
cracked me up, because it's this beautiful nature thing that's become this like big tourist attraction for families and vans. Like, ooh, nice. Like, no one's even thinking about. I don't know. It's interesting, and what were we talking about here? Yeah, and then, Campbell saw these characters on Fifth Avenue. There was a quote that he said, "I see the face of Beauty from Beauty and the Beast and, whoever else on Fifth Avenue." But also he's not even like really thinking about the significance of being on that particular street. The stories are not like synchronized to the characters themselves. It's all just
Right.
kind of turned inward. And then, so it only makes sense that the winners of the Homo exomorphic age,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, they actually align best with the technology itself.
That's right. And it's technology, and it's capital. It's really the economics too, right? And they've kind of come together.
Yeah.
And so it becomes those who are best at those games, accumulating capital, and essentially kind of algorithmically accumulating capital, are the winners.
And having money, you make money. And then people that are able to kind of withdraw their empathy are the ones that make it to a point where they have billions or even now trillions of dollars.
Musk himself said that empathy is for suckers.
Jeez Louise.
And to say that, with now he's the first trillionaire, is horrifying.
Expletive.
It's horrifying.
Yeah.
when we are creatures built on empathy
Yeah.
for each other.
And that's the problem, really, is the fact that, and this is not Watts or Campbell's fault, far from it. It's just the fact that those kinds of people who don't see others as important, they don't worry about the other archetypes that they must interact with, they don't think about themselves in the context outside of being the main character, they are the ones who are finding the most power and success. Mm-hmm. And then why is that the measurement of success? Why can't people enjoy their lives without pursuing immense amounts of wealth and fame and power? And, in what world is that the universal bliss when we know as empathetic people, as empathetic creatures, most of us, right? We know that bliss actually looks a lot different. It feels different to everybody, but maybe, it's in nature, and it's in, feeling for each other and discovering something new. It's, we can't really necessarily put our finger on one thing, but there's no joy or bliss to be found in raw power.
In the subjugation of others. And
yeah.
If you look at both Christianity and Buddhism, by the way,
yeah,
they are essentially religions of compassion. At the end of the day, Christ's act is one of compassion for humanity. And the Buddha, renunciates his life of privilege to try to find a middle way toward. And ultimately it kind of comes to this idea of the Bodhisattva, and a Bodhisattva is someone who could achieve total freedom from reincarnation, total enlightenment, but doesn't do it until everybody reaches that point.
Exactly.
So they reject that final act of bliss, and they go back into the world and they try to help others through compassion. And at the end of the day, like the Dalai Lama talks about meditation and yoga, people get it wrong in the West.
Right.
You're actually in an act of compassion, of empathy. That is the moment that you're in, not one of I want to be relaxed.
yeah.
Or I want to have,
yeah. I'm falling asleep.
I want to be more flexible.
Oh, great, awesome. I want to get the best picture for Instagrams.
Right.
Right. Well, I think that is just it then. Campbell and Watts were humans. Mm-hmm. They were people, and I think that they both had a sense of understanding of why we need mythology and, what that means and how that translates. And now not having a myth, an architecture, people being more spiritual than religious, we understand these things. Mm-hmm. We understand these functions. And, going to something like compassion as the main goal and morality, we draw the same conclusions every single time. Mm-hmm. What is it that we need to fill the gap? Do we need a story of a person following a journey? Do we need to understand, our own journey? What do you think what do you think the answer is?
I think that's why many of us were drawn to the psychology, not the religion, but the psychology of Buddhism.
Yeah. Because
the Buddha did try through the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path to create a kind of architecture, even though it's more like a set of rules, right livelihood, right, all those, the Eightfold Path. But that was within an orientating kind of cultural mythology or structure.
Right.
And even though he walked outside of it, he really was living inside of it in terms of who he was communicating to.
Absolutely.
So we're in a time where science doesn't create awe. Where our information systems are separating us, not connecting us. And we're worried about our families, we're worried about so we're in a really difficult time, but we know Like all of the major kind of cultures, like the Indians had kalpas. So these were 4 stages, and then there's this stage of kind of destruction, but then that brings rebirth.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
we're kind of in this stage of destruction, but then that's clearing the way for the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the 2000 A Space Odyssey. Like that's a metaphor of the big guy that looks like he's coming out of an egg in the space. But what does that metaphor mean to us
Right.
as we move? And that is the movie, right? Those obelisks that come up, those
Yep.
were inflection points for humanity. We're at that 3rd obelisk. Like, what do we do?
Yeah. It is the Chinese concept of, I believe it's Ji.
Li.
No.
Oh, G. Oh, G.
Ji,
Yes.
Where it's this dichotomy that it's a symbol and it means both danger and opportunity.
Yes.
And I think
That's right.
we know these things. We
Yeah.
know, and like I said in the past video, it's in our bones.
Mm-hmm.
And I really truly believe in, I think a healthy amount of optimism is in order
Yes.
in this day and age, and really understanding that just because we have extended ourselves to the point where our systems are extending themselves separate from our own bodies and minds, that doesn't mean that we've lost anything to time. I mean, it hasn't even been quite long enough for us to move on from the 20th century for inspiration for fashion and music, I mean,
Right.
we're
Still tethered.
we barely have left anything behind, and I think that we just need to use what we know more often,
Yeah.
a little bit more.
Mhm.
I mean, and things are going to unfold the way that they are supposed to, and we're going to figure it out as we are figuring it out. And I think that's what I like to take away from Follow Your Bliss. Figuring out what your bliss is part of the process of following your bliss.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Finding your passion,
Mm-hmm.
that wet edge
Yeah.
of your life that you want to paint with. And that is a part of it. But we also need architects to help us create the social, like if you think about the Constitution, I talk about this,
Mm-hmm.
that was a beautiful architecture for social governance.
Yeah.
It lived into the tensions.
It worked for what it was supposed to. It worked for the time
Mhm.
in which it was written. And that's kind of what we need to do. And even if it just is thinking about these things like Campbell and Watts were doing in their time, thinking about them, applying them, eventually something will resonate with a lot of people. And, we are naturally predisposed to tribalize ourselves and find like-minded individuals. I would hope that, we can find a tribe of humanities thinkers. And I'm
You.
literally, but seriously, and I mean, I know people feel similarly that we need these kinds of things to not only live but survive.
Literally.
Yeah.
Survive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I'm really excited to get into the next few subjects for this module. We've got
Mhm.
some really interesting stuff coming up. Okay. But anyways, Kavi. Okay, anyways, and then I'm also excited that you'll be joining me on every episode, starting out every single module. We're already on the second one, so after this we'll have like only 7 more to go, which it's gonna go by quickly, but thank you for being here to start
you.
out this series. And yeah, anything else you want to say before we close out?
No, I just think this is such a wonderful series to take on, and it's called the Humanities for a reason, because
Right.
it's about being human.
Bingo.
And let's be human together.
I like that. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. We'll see you next week. All right.